Okay, I think we're good to go.
Okay.
Um, mine's going all fuzzy now. Hello, hello. Hey guys, today I've got a very special guest. We're going to talk a little bit about doing a trip through Europe. Her name's Emily Walters, and yeah, it's a very unique story, and it's a lot of information, and I think it's very insightful. Hey, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you planned a trip. This is over the summer of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
You and your younger brother, you guys went through Europe.
Yeah.
When did you plant this seed, and how did it get started, and then when was all the planning and everything into it?
Well, I've always loved reading all kinds of books, always. So obviously, Europe is something that's been on my mind for my whole life. And so I've kind of always wanted to go to Europe. And when I was 10, we got to go to England for almost 2 weeks, but it really wasn't enough time to see much of anything. We saw a lot, it was cool, but I was too young to really do as much as I wanted. It was too short of a time to do as much as I wanted. So since then, I've kind of been planning, when I can, I want to go back to Europe and do everything.
Yeah.
Which we still never got to do everything, of course. But so basically, this is something I've been wanting to do for ages. And so in December, I just thought, hey, I don't have anything planned for this summer yet. I was thinking of what am I going to do this summer, possible jobs, possible trips. And then I thought, hey, you know what? Actually, maybe this should be the summer that we actually just do it because you only live once. I just want to finally do this thing.
Yeah, most people don't even get the chance. Most people don't even leave the country, so to even have the opportunity to head out. What was the planning process like for you and your brother?
We didn't plan. We just figured we would be spontaneous. I hate airplanes, so we booked tickets for a Amtrak train for 3 days across the country to New York, and then an ocean liner from New York to Southampton, England. So we got our tickets for the trip over to Europe, and then for the trip back a month later. And that was all we did to plan for it. We did not do any other planning. We were just like, yeah, we'll see what we see. Oh, and the other bit of planning we did was my brother bought tickets to a car race in Belgium because he loves cars. So that was the literal only planning we did.
I love cars
And then
too.
we went.
Wow, that is old school. So training, I would like to do that. Was that a fun experience with Amtrak?
It was, yeah. This was my first time being on a train or on a ship, and obviously I was on both for many, many days. And yeah, it was crazy. I will say, we also used trains to travel all around Europe, and European trains are so much better than American trains because America has invested our money in the highways, whereas Europe has invested their money in trains. And you can see the difference. European trains are smooth and fast and comfortable. American trains go bang, 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 and it's like, on European trains, you don't even hear the clickety-clack, clickety-clack. But on American trains, you very much do.
That's all you hear, yeah. How long, so you 3 days, you're in New York, where'd you leave from New York?
Yeah, we left from New York.
Okay, and then you jumped on an ocean liner. How many days was that?
9 days.
9 days, that's
Well,
not too bad.
8 to go from New York to Southampton, 9 for the return journey because we left from Germany and went to Southampton again and then across again. So it was longer on the way back.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the cruise ship itself was 9 days across.
Yeah.
Wow. And then that you pulled into England, is that right? Great.
Yes.
Then you had no accommodation.
Well, we had booked a hotel room for the night when we got there. Because our mom was like, I don't want you to just be stranded. So she got us a hotel room for the night we got there. And then after that, we were like, from night to night, just figuring out where do we want to go? What do we want to see and do? But the biggest thing I learned from this trip is that actually planning is really, really important. I did not do pretty much any planning. I kind of meant to do some planning, but my brother and I were both so busy with school. He was graduating that spring. I was doing college. And then over the summer, I was teaching at primitive skills gatherings. He was running here and there for graduation and stuff. We didn't have time to plan, even if we had wanted to. So we didn't. And this resulted in us not always being able to go where we wanted to go because sometimes places were booked out. There were times when it was like, oh, every single hotel or hostel of any sort or any description is full in an entire town.
Wow.
4 weeks out. And it's like, oh, I didn't know Europe got that busy in the summer, but it does.
Just,
Every single town is like Disneyland pretty much, even in remote places. So you have to book at least a week ahead of time.
How'd you get around that?
Well, at first, we didn't. We just ran into issues. But about halfway through the trip, I realized this sucks. This is ridiculous. So at one point in Switzerland, halfway through the trip, I literally sat down in the hotel room for about an hour and planned out the entire rest of the trip. If we wanted to get a tour of a certain museum, I booked the tour ahead of time. If we wanted to stay in a town, I booked the hotels ahead of time.
Wow.
Yeah, so
So you had your points of where you were going to hit as you went.
and planned it all out, which was the opposite of how we wanted to do it. We wanted to be spontaneous, but we found out that when you're spontaneous, you can't do anything. Like the Louvre in Paris, like we wanted to go see that, but it was booked out. There were no more tickets.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you didn't get to see it?
No.
Oh, bugger.
Yeah, and then there were some towns where it was like, we want to go to this town, but there's literally nowhere to sleep. Even if you're willing to spend exorbitant amounts of money, which we weren't, but even if you were, you still wouldn't be able to stay there. Like you could be the richest person in the world and not be able to stay there because there's literally nothing for any price anywhere for miles around.
Well, let's clarify it too. I mean, you guys did this on a shoestring budget. You guys
Yeah.
didn't have a bunch of money.
Yeah.
It was very, very guided in a sense of you had to watch what you eat, watch what you do, watch where you spend.
And something interesting that we found out with that was we assumed, oh, staying in youth hostels is going to be so cheap, right?
Yeah.
Because staying in a youth hostel is like between, usually for one person staying in a youth hostel, it's like $20 to $40 usually, or $50, $60 sometimes.
Yeah.
Staying in a hotel for one room is around $90 to $100, $110. They're cheaper in Europe, by the way. Hotels in Europe are a lot cheaper than America. So somewhere around $100.
Okay.
Sometimes a little more, a little less, depending. But we thought, oh, well, the hostel is half the price. But here's the deal, is that in hostels, they book by the bed, whereas in hotels, they book by the room. So when you're traveling with two people, staying in a hostel where you have to book two beds, or staying in a hotel where you only have to book one room, it actually ends up being the same price.
So just hotels.
So we just stayed in hotels, which is like
probably cleaner too, to be honest. I stayed in a few hostels when I was traveling.
The hostels weren't dirty. It was just really annoying because you have to like walk all the way down a hall in the dark to go to the bathroom, and like you have to get ready for bed in the dark because so people are already in bed, and like it just gets to be really
parameters
annoying.
are very
Yeah, we were also sick for a lot of this trip, and it was like it would be inconsiderate to be like coughing all over the room when there are 6 other people sleeping there.
Wow. Wow,
Yeah.
that's it's so interesting. So you land in England. How long were you in England for? How many days?
2 days. 1 day in Southampton, 1 day in London.
Okay.
And then we took the Channel Tunnel to Paris.
Fun.
Yeah.
That's a train, right? Yeah.
I wanted to take a ferry. My brother wanted to take the train, so we were like, oh, we'll take the train. Okay. I wanted to actually get to see stuff because on the train you don't get to see anything. Like you barely even know when you go in the channel.
Yeah, you're in it and you're out of it.
Because like you're going through so many tunnels on land anyway that it's like, oh, apparently we're in France now, but I don't know when we actually went under the channel. Like that would have been cool if I had whatever, but you know.
Yeah, because you start underground and off you go.
Yeah. So it's like, what? But then we spent 2 days in Paris, which was wonderful. I loved Paris. We just missed the Olympics, thank goodness. We were afraid we were going to accidentally end up in Paris at the same time as the Olympics because we didn't know about the Olympics when we were planning this trip. We didn't plan anything. And then people on the cruise ship going over start telling us, oh, you're going to be in Paris during the Olympics. And we're like, oopsie. But actually, the Olympics weren't happening yet. It was like going to be a week after we left. So
nice.
Then we ended up going to Italy. We spent a couple days in Geneva, 4 or 5 days in Rome, a couple days in Venice, and then we went up to the car race in Belgium. From there, we spent a week in Switzerland, traveling all around Switzerland, which was absolutely wonderful. And then we went back down to Italy because I missed it, and we spent some time in an Italian beach town near Geneva called San Michele. And then, before that, we also spent a day in Lake Como, which is northern Italy, right next to Switzerland. Then we went up to Germany because that's where our cruise ship was leaving from, and we spent a couple days in Hamburg.
Wow. This seems very extremely condensed. What were your main points that like you had to see, like what you knew that you wanted to see going across there? What was the highlights of your trip?
Well, we didn't know when we left, but when we got there, we started realizing that we each had a motto for the trip. My motto was never pass a castle, and my brother's motto was never pass a concert. So
Oh,
we went through every town. If there was any live music anywhere, we had to stop and see it. Even if it was very inconvenient to stop and see it, we had to. And if there was
wow.
any sort of castle, even if it was just like a little ruin on the side of the street,
Yeah,
we had to stop and explore it.
I love
So
that.
that was what we did for the trip. We went around seeing all the live music and all the castles.
What castles did you, any famous ones that you got to see?
Um, well, one of the cool ones was in Braubach, Germany, which we went to right before Hamburg. We spent 2 days in Braubach, and it's right on the Rhine, and they have a castle on the Rhine about every 2 miles. Same thing in northern Italy. They have a castle about every mile or two along the seashore.
Wow.
Because they were guarding against pirates and stuff. So all along the rivers, all along the seashore, it's like a castle every mile or two.
She.
And so this one in Germany, it was up on the hill, and it's the best well-preserved castle from medieval times. Like a lot of castles are, in some sort of disrepair, but this one is the very best well-preserved because it was never actually conquered at all, ever.
Wow.
The only time it was attacked was during World War II when some American soldiers got bored and started shooting at it, but they didn't really do much damage.
Wow, it's funny when you go into. I've been into a couple of castles, and this one particular castle where I remember going into, we went down into like the dungeon part of it, and it stinks. It stinks. It still stunk so bad. Like, and the guy's like, "Yeah, this is a smell." And I mean, this is a tiny little hole, not much of a room. Like,
Yeah.
I would have hated to have been in there because you'd be claustrophobic. So small, and just like a kind of like a lock or a keepsafe. I don't know. But it didn't smell too good. Did you come across things like that where you enter in a room and you just feel the heritage in there?
I mean, we felt heritage for sure. Nothing stank because I think people took care of things well enough. New York is what stank. It's really, really dirty there. I never knew. I have never been to New York before. It's so dirty. They actually have rats running around. It's literally like the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, did we go back in time to the Middle Ages? Like, there are literally rats running around and garbage along the streets. And this is like
Yep.
modern America. Like, I
That's-
never knew that. I never
Yeah.
knew that. I've not been east of the Dakotas before. Like,
Oh,
Mount
wow.
Rushmore is the farthest east I had ever gone. So seeing all this stuff was amazing. But anyway, in the castles, like, stuff was extremely old, but they took really good care of everything. So
Yeah.
nothing was like weird because the towns there, they take really good care of stuff because each of these towns in Europe, almost every single town has a castle, and every town, like, their castle is one of their big, like, money revenue
prize
systems
businesses, yeah.
because everybody comes to see the castle. So like all the hotels, all the stores, all the restaurants, like, they exist because of the castle pretty much.
Yeah.
So people take really good care of it. Like, there's this one castle where, like, they have adobe ceilings that are from 1200. Like, almost 1,000-year-old adobe that still exists because it's just been taken such good care of. And then same with the wood. Like, there's woodwork in these castles,
Yeah.
wooden ceilings, wood roof rafters from trees that were harvested 1,000 years ago, and they're still in perfectly good repair.
Isn't it amazing to see that?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it still holds up the snow every winter, and this tree was harvested 1,000 years ago. It's like, in America, we don't see things that old.
No. Yeah, we definitely don't build. I mean, the modern age of building now is kind of crass compared to where it was before.
Very much. Everything falls
Yeah.
apart. It's so different.
Yeah, I suppose, and it's a little disheartening too when you come across those types of things, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, in some of the castles, some of the grandeur. I mean, they have doors that are like 15 to 16 feet tall, and the locker mechanism is just amazing, and it's still all preserved and ran very well. Did you find things like that just blow your mind?
Well, especially cathedrals. Like, the
Oh,
castles
yeah.
are very human scale, I felt like, because these are places where people lived, like, for almost 1,000 years, and most of them, like, people were actually dwelling, like, families were living in these castles. So it was like, it didn't make sense to have a 15-foot tall door. Like,
Right.
it was very much, these were places where people lived. This was where they stored their food. This was where they did daily activities. But the cathedrals are meant to wow people. That's why they exist. So the doors were huge.
Extravagant.
And you just stand in the cathedrals and look way up, like we, some of the most spectacular ones we saw, of course, were St. Paul's in London, and where we got to climb the stairs all the way up to the top of the dome and see, like, the whole view of London. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And St. Peter's in the Vatican, where we actually got to see Mass in Latin, which was super cool because I studied Latin for all of high school.
Oh, yeah,
so
you
it was
did.
like, we have to see this. So
Yeah,
we
yeah.
did, and it was awesome. And of course, that cathedral is amazing as well. But all the cathedrals we saw, like, there are smaller cathedrals in most towns throughout all the countries in Europe, and beautiful stained glass, beautiful stonework, beautiful everything. And even the small ones are pretty big.
I like this. We're kind of coming up. We've got about 10 minutes left
right.
before 2 o'clock. So let's. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about? And maybe we could do this in segments if you want to do some more about this. If anyone out there wants to if they have any questions, write some questions down, shoot them across, and then maybe you could answer them for them and see what we can come up with there. What do you talk? Let's talk about some of the other hits that you made out there off your list, and what did you like the most about it?
What I liked the most was seeing the Roman Forum.
Ah,
Because, like I said, I studied Latin for years,
yeah.
so like that place was very real to me.
Okay.
It was a really, really deep and special place for me for years. Because of all the reading I did, and that was my world. And so then I go in person and I have to see it, I have to see it. We accidentally stumbled on it by accident, actually, because we were exploring Rome and we were very lost. But anyway, we were just wandering around Rome and it was getting dark, and we had intended to go see the Forum the next day, but we were lost and it was getting dark, and we suddenly find ourselves in this big open area with columns, and like here's a triumphal column with like all the like scenes showing somebody's victory, and like here's a front piece of a temple and like the big grand entranceway of something or other, and it's like, oh, I was like shaking my brother like, Dave, guess where we are? I think we're in the Forum. Like we recognized it. Like we didn't know where we were, but we recognized it from everything, and it was
pretty obvious to see.
So amazing. And then the next day, of course, we actually spent 2 days exploring the Forum. And it was honestly sad to see it in ruins, because after reading so many books about Roman history, I was just used to it being
Prestige,
alive and living and functioning and all that. And now I come and it's like, oh, this hasn't really been used for 2,000 years much.
Just to touch on that a little bit, if that sounds a little bit weird to people out there, I'm just going to touch a little bit. Your upbringing is extremely different from everybody, and I think I admire it. But we've had a conversation before about it. You didn't grow up with TV.
No.
You grew up. Your parents are pretty amazing. You're a remarkable person. Just how you deal with life now, it's fun to see. But your knowledge just comes from books. Mm-hmm. So you're all either in real history or great stories. Mm-hmm. So just to anyone out there that's sort of curious about the way how you saw the Forum, I mean, that's pretty amazing, to have that insight and to see it your way. That would be really cool. It would be fun to be able to see the way how you see it,
It was amazing to see.
Yeah.
For sure.
Let your mind run wild, and what caused it to become so decrepit and now lost over time,
Yeah. Another of my favorite things that we saw was the Matterhorn, which we technically knew that it existed because we went to Disneyland when I was 7, but since then I had forgotten that it existed. Back when we went to Disneyland when I was 7, I was like, oh, I've got to go see the real Matterhorn someday.
Yeah.
And then I totally forgot about it. Forgot about it for years. Didn't even know which country it was in because I forgot about it.
Yeah.
And then we find ourselves in Switzerland, and my brother's like, oh, let's go to that place. Like, he's literally Googling towns in Switzerland to find a place to go. And one is called this thing called the Gornergrat, which is super high altitude. And he's like, it's in the mountains and it looks cool. My brother is like a skier and loves mountains, so that's why. So we went, and there's the Matterhorn. It's this town, the main town is called Zermatt, and it's right below the Matterhorn. And like, you look up and there it is. When it's not covered in clouds, it's usually covered in clouds. And then you take a cog railway way up to the top of a nearby mountain called the Gornergrat. And you can look across this valley to see the Matterhorn. And it's so amazing. And then we climbed up this other thing called the Riffelhorn, which is like in that valley between. We didn't make it to the top because we got like halfway up and then realized, we actually need actual climbing equipment to go up this thing. But it was still amazing.
Yeah. And to find those places, were they like a full day of hiking to get all that? Like, did you get back late at night? Or?
I mean, we hiked a ton. We also took the cog railway, so like that was the most of it. But we also spent hours and hours hiking.
Yeah.
But we did that everywhere we went. All of these towns and stuff. Like, we spent an entire day just walking around London. Like,
Yeah.
we were definitely just walking, like, at least 10 or 15 miles a day, because we were just walking and walking and walking around all these things.
That sounds fantastic. And then, so you made your way across. Your furthest point would have been what, Italy or something? Is that right? Or
My furthest south?
yeah, sure,
Oh, yeah, our furthest south point was Rome.
Rome. Okay. And then basically give us an entire, like, the map. Where you left London. You went to
Paris.
Paris.
Yeah, so it was Southampton to London to Paris to Geneva to Rome to Venice to Belgium to 3 different towns in Switzerland over the course of a week, to Lake Como in northern Italy, to a beach town in northern Italy, to German Castle, to Hamburg.
Okay, and then from there back.
From there to Southampton again, where we took a tour of the city of Winchester, which is near Southampton, where we got to see this round table that was like, it wasn't actually King Arthur's Round Table. It was created in the 1200s, but a lot of people for a long time actually believed that it actually was King Arthur's Round Table.
Interesting.
So it's this really famous thing. I'm an Arthurian scholar, so it's a big deal to get to see that.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And also Jane Austen's grave in the Winchester Cathedral.
Oh wow.
Winchester was so cool for me. But anyway, then we took the ship across back to
Back home.
New York, and then train to Chicago, and then train to Utah.
And then your entirety. How long did it take doing all this?
2 months total.
2 months.
Yeah. Obviously, a lot of that was travel time, but
Wow.
it was 2 months total.
What about foods? What would you do for foods?
It depended on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Paris, I ate escargot 3 times over the course of 24 hours because it's one of my favorite foods, and I was like, by golly, in Paris, I'm eating escargot.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a delicacy.
Yeah, it was so good.
Is it expensive?
No,
No?
I mean it's not like super cheap, but
What
it's
does
like
it taste like?
it tastes amazing. It tastes like escargot. It tastes like garlic and squishy snails, and it's so good.
Okay.
I think it's good.
Yeah.
But anyway, and so it would be like 15 euros for like 12 snails, which is like a big meal. Like we could share that.
Uh-huh.
So it would be like for the 2 of us, or
Wow.
like 10 euros for like 6 snails.
Okay.
So not that bad, honestly.
What else would you have? What would be your go-to food? Just to, so you knew you didn't want to spend too much money on that day. What would you go to, or how would you
There
do
was
it?
no go-to. It was totally different in every country.
So you
100%
always
different.
ate out?
Almost always, yeah,
Okay.
because we didn't really have ways to prepare stuff, and grocery stores don't really exist in Europe. We were expecting, oh, we'll go to grocery stores and get stuff and like make our own lunches and stuff. Grocery stores don't exist. There are fruit stands if you want fruit. There are butcher shops on occasion if you want meat, but even those are hard to find. There are little snack shacks, like literally like a hole in the wall inside of the street, like literally just a fraction of the size of this room, like the size of maybe a bathroom stall.
Wow.
That sell snacks like some chips or some chewing gum. But besides those things, like there are not grocery stores in Europe like we think of them in
Wow.
America. There's no store where you can just go to get, oh yeah, I'm going to get paper towels and lettuce and a can of soup all in the same place. Doesn't exist. Occasionally, we would find a tiny grocery store that was like that.
Did you stock up?
Huh?
Would you stock up?
Yeah, we stocked up like crazy, and we would just wander around like, oh my gosh, we're in a grocery store, like so homesick,
Yeah.
so nostalgic, so happy to be there.
That's funny.
Yeah, in that beach town in Italy, actually, we found a grocery store, and we bought several cartons of juice and all of this food that we were going to eat, and it was awesome.
Out of the whole trip, what made the difference for you? Like, could be anything. Anything. What most fondest memory? What was it?
Well,
This is the last thought.
I've talked about all of my fondest memories. So one of my craziest memories was my entire luggage, everything, got stolen in Italy about halfway through the trip. So that was one of the hardest things I've gone through in my life, actually.
Wow.
And it was really tough to get through that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So you did. We'll talk about that another time.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, thanks for this. This is really fun. It's such an insightful exploration. It's kind of, I don't think, I mean, most people won't ever do that, but I think it's cool that you had the chance to do that.
It was amazing. It was truly amazing. Yeah.
Thanks for chatting with us.
Yeah.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Thanks for talking.
It's a very unique story, and maybe we'll do some more soon. Yeah, thanks.